Picture this. Northern Colorado, a colossal landscape where rugged peaks punch through the clouds, and a stunning variety of ecosystems unfold as you gain elevation. That's Rocky Mountain National Park, or RMNP, a place brimming with, well, awe-inspiring beauty, its history whispering through the valleys, and wildlife thriving.
Yeah, whether you seek quiet reflection or maybe some thrilling adventure, it's really got it all.
It really does.
And on this deep dive, we're tackling a pretty comprehensive report on RMNP. Our goal, to pull out the most crucial insights about this remarkable park, specifically for you, our listener.
Right.
We want to give you a thorough understanding quickly, efficiently, without burying you in excessive detail.
Exactly. This isn't just a pretty postcard. It's a story etched in stone and told through its vibrant natural communities. Established back on January 26, 1915, it was the result of a powerful vision held by local champions like Enos Mills, Abner Sprague, F.O. Stanley.
Key figures.
Yeah, they recognized the profound value of these wild spaces early on, and their foresight, well, it gifted us this incredible sanctuary.
And the sheer scale is just breathtaking. Located in northern Colorado near Estes Park on the east and Grand Lake out west.
Right.
Rocky Mountain National Park sprawls across a massive 265,847 acres. That's about 415 square miles.
Wow.
And remarkably, nearly 94.8% to be exact, is designated wilderness.
That's huge.
Yeah, it really underscores a deep commitment to preserving its, untamed character.
Okay, let's unpack this. That's a serious amount of untamed land. And it's not just flat. The elevation changes dramatically.
Oh, incredibly.
From 7,600 feet all the way up to the 14,259-foot summit of Longs Peak.
Yeah.
And within that vertical climb, you'll encounter 124 named peaks over 8,789 feet, including 77 that soar above 12,000 feet.
77?
And 20 majestic giants topping 13,000 feet. And we can't forget the water 147 lakes shimmer across the landscape, covering over 11,150 acres.
It's a landscape defined by extremes, offering just an incredible diversity of experiences, and you can access a lot of it via, approximately 355 miles of hiking trails.
Right.
So it's really no surprise that visitation is so high. In 2022 alone, over 4.3 million people came to witness this grandeur.
4.3 million.
And its global importance is recognized, too. It's been a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve since 1976.
But that high number of visitors in such a vast wilderness, it creates a fascinating puzzle, doesn't it?
It really does.
How do you allow millions to experience this place while still safeguarding its delicate nature?
Right, and that's where management strategies like the timed entry permits come into play. They're trying to strike that crucial balance between access and preservation.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And that dramatic elevation range we mentioned, it isn't just a number. It's the very foundation of the park's ecological identity.
Okay.
This vertical expanse creates distinct life zones, each with its own climate, its own water sources, and even its own chapter in the long history of human interaction with the area. And here's where it gets really interesting. This upward reach has profound consequences for the entire ecosystem, particularly when we think about the ongoing shifts in our environment.
How so?
Well, this dramatic shift in ecosystems within a relatively short horizontal distance makes RMNP a kind of living laboratory for understanding how species adapt to rapid environmental changes. That's a crucial insight in our current climate.
Gotcha. So the mission of this deep dive is crystal clear: to truly grasp the natural wonders, the rich layers of history, and the enduring legacy of Rocky Mountain National Park, all based on the information in this comprehensive report.
Exactly. Let's plunge into that living tapestry, starting with the ecosystems and the incredible wildlife that call this place home.
Okay.
The park is indeed a living tapestry, intricately woven from these distinct ecosystems defined by elevation and climate. Think of it as vertical zonation.
Vertical zonation, like layers.
Precisely. Each upward step reveals a new and distinct world.
Let's start at the base then, with the montane realm, ranging from about 5,600 up to 9,500 feet. The report describes it as the lowest, most accessible zone, with rivers, meadows, forests. And it sounds like this zone is the heart of biodiversity in the park.
It is. The montane zone, generally warmer and drier than higher up, supports the greatest variety of plant and animal life.
Okay.
What's fascinating here is the contrast between different slope aspects. South-facing slopes get more sun.
Right, so they're drier.
Exactly. Drier, and often characterized by open forests of ponderosa pine.
Ah, the ponderosa. I remember reading about them. Tall pines, reddish bark, And they supposedly smell like vanilla on warm days, right?
That's the one.
And they can live for an incredibly long time. The report mentions over 400 years.
That's right. Their adaptations, like that thick bark that resists fire, allow them to thrive in those sunnier, drier conditions.
Makes sense.
Now, if you turn to the north-facing slopes, which get less direct sun and hold more moisture,
Cooler, wetter.
right, you'll typically find denser forests, often dominated by Douglas fir.
So even within this lower zone, there's a big difference in plant communities just based on sun and moisture. What other plants define this montane realm?
Well, besides the dominant pines and fir, you'll see lodgepole pine, the beautiful quaking aspen with those shimmering leaves,
Love aspens.
and a variety of shrubs like common juniper, sagebrush, mountain mahogany, and in the open meadows look for wildflowers like the elegant mountain iris.
Sounds like a really vibrant landscape. And who are the typical animal residents down here?
Well, the montane zone is crucial winter range for many of the park's larger mammals. You'll commonly see herds of elk
Okay.
and mule deer grazing. The Albert squirrel, with its tufted ears, it has a strong link to those ponderosa pine forests.
Ah, interesting connection.
Yeah, you might also spot Steller's jays, wild turkeys, black bears, coyotes, porcupines, and interestingly, moose, while historically less common here, are now seen more often in the riparian areas, those wet spots along streams and rivers.
Huh, moose moving in. And the western tanager, that bright migratory bird, breeds down here too, right?
It does. It's amazing to think about their long journey.
It really underscores how vital this zone is, not just as habitat, but also because it's where the park kind of edges up against human development.
Precisely. Now, as we ascend, we move into the subalpine zone, typically from around 9,000 or 9,500 feet up to about 11,000 feet.
Okay, getting higher.
And here, the climate shifts dramatically. Short, cool summers and long, cold, snowy winters. We're talking often over 5 feet of snow accumulation.
Wow, that sounds like a much tougher environment for life. What kind of plants can handle those conditions?
The dominant trees here are Engelmann spruce and subalpine fir. They form those dense, darker evergreen forests you see higher up.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also find hardy limber pine, known for clinging to exposed, windswept ridges. Lodgepole pine and aspen can still top up, especially after disturbances like fire or avalanches.
Okay.
And as you get near tree line, you see the trees taking on that distinctive wind-battered look, those fascinating krummholz or crooked wood phonations.
Krummholz. I love that word. It really paints a picture of that struggle against the elements. What about plants on the forest floor in the subalpine?
Often more shade-tolerant stuff, things like blueberry and broom huckleberry. And if you're lucky, you might find some beautiful orchids, like the delicate fairy slipper, tucked away in cool, moist spots.
And the wildlife up here must have some incredible adaptations for those long, snowy winters.
Absolutely. Take Clark's nutcracker. It has this amazing mutual relationship with limber and white bark pines.
How so?
It caches their seeds for later, thousands of them, and inevitably forgets some, which helps regenerate the forest.
Clever bird.
And the snowshoe hare is another great example. Its coat changes color for camouflage.
White in winter, brown in summer.
Exactly. And its huge hind feet act like natural snowshoes.
Makes sense.
You might also find American martens, long-tailed weasels, and, if you're really lucky, the elusive Canada lynx, or maybe even a wolverine.
Wow, rare sightings.
Very rare. And during summer, elk and mule deer do migrate up into this zone to graze.
Okay, now let's venture even higher, into the alpine tundra. Above 11,000 feet, all the way up to the top of Long's Peak. The report says this zone is a full third of the park and one of the best preserved examples in the lower 48 states.
That's right. The climate up there is truly extreme. Intense sun, incredibly high winds, over 100 miles per hour in winter sometimes.
Whoa.
Bitter cold, and a growing season that's often less than 40 days long.
40 days. How does anything survive?
It's a testament to the tenacity of life. Plants show incredible adaptations. They tend to be small, low-growing perennials hugging the ground.
To escape the wind.
Exactly, and conserve warmth. You see lots of cushion shapes, dense hairs for insulation and UV protection, even red pigments to help capture solar energy.
Amazing.
And despite the short season, you get some iconic wildflowers.
Yeah.
Alpine forget-me-not, sky pilot, alpine avens. But it's crucial to remember how fragile they are.
Right. Tread lightly up there.
Very lightly. Even a few footsteps can cause damage that takes years to recover.
And we see more Krummholz at this transition between 11,000 and 12,000 feet, where the trees are even more twisted by the wind.
Exactly. They're like living sculptures, constant reminders of the extreme conditions at tree line. And the animals are just as specialized.
Tell me about the animals that call the roof of the park home. Who lives up there year-round?
Well, you have the yellow-bellied marmot, which spends most of the year hibernating to survive the cold.
Smart marmot.
Then there's the American pika, fascinating little creature. It doesn't hibernate.
What does it do?
It spends the short summer frantically collecting vegetation, drying it into hay piles to eat all winter long under the snow.
Wow, industrious.
And the white-tailed ptarmigan has that amazing seasonal camouflage, white in winter, mottled brown in summer.
Blends right in.
Perfectly. And during the brief summer, you do see elk and bighorn sheep venturing up to graze on the hardy alpine plants.
It really highlights how vulnerable this tundra ecosystem is to climate change, doesn't it? If these specialized species have nowhere higher to go.
Precisely. And those crumples trees we talked about, they're more than just interesting shapes. They're living indicators of conditions at tree line, super sensitive to shifts in temperature and snowpack.
Now, the report also highlights riparian corridors, which run through all elevations. Sounds like vital lifelines.
They truly are. Following the water bodies, they create these zones of much higher biodiversity.
Okay.
And 4 major rivers actually start in RMNP, the Colorado, Fall River, Cache-la-Poudre, and Big Thompson. So these corridors are ecologically vital well beyond the park boundaries.
And the plants there must be adapted to wet conditions.
Yes, you find lots of water-loving species. Willows, cottonwoods, bog birch, river birch, mountain alder, and tons of moisture-loving wildflowers like cow parsnip and monkshood.
And I assume the animal life is drawn to the water, too.
Absolutely. Beavers are a keystone species here. Their dams create wetlands that benefit so many others.
Ecosystem engineers.
Totally. You'll also see waterfowl like mallards, maybe even trumpeter swans, amphibians too, like the boreal toad, which is a species of concern, and the western chorus frog.
So these riparian zones are travel corridors and biodiversity hotspots.
Exactly right. Crucial parts of the park's fabric.
So summarizing the wildlife, the report notes 66 native mammal species recorded, though sadly some, like grizzlies and wolves, are gone from the park now. Which mammals are visitors most likely to see today?
You'll often see large elk herds, especially on the east side in winter. Bighorn sheep are frequently seen near sheep lakes, particularly May to mid-August.
Good tip.
Moose are becoming quite common in the Cowanich Valley on the west side, in the willows there. Mule deer are pretty widespread at lower elevations.
Okay.
And you're quite likely to spot yellow-bellied marmots and pikas in rocky areas, especially along Trail Ridge Road. Listen for that pika eep.
The whole two.
Black bears and coyotes around too, though sightings can be less predictable.
And the bird life sounds amazing, 280 species. Any standout birds to look for?
Definitely. Keep an eye out for Clark's nutcracker, Steller's jay, the vibrant western tanager, the camouflaged white-tailed ptarmigan up high, American dippers bobbing in streams,
Zippers are fun to watch.
and impressive raptors like golden eagles and prairie falcons soaring above.
And for those interested in what's swimming in the lakes and streams,
There are 7 native fish species and 4 non-native ones. A big conservation focus is on the greenback cutthroat trout, which is threatened.
right, recovery efforts are ongoing.
Yeah. And the park also supports a rich diversity of invertebrates, at least 142 confirmed butterfly species alone.
Wow. And botanically, about 1,100 vascular plant species. Now, about endemic species, any plants or animals found only in RMNP.
Interestingly, the report suggests probably not. No confirmed plant or animal is strictly endemic just to the park itself.
Okay.
While the broader Rockies have many unique species, their ranges usually extend beyond the park. But species like the Colorado blue columbine or cliffbush are very characteristic of the park's environment.
So it's more about protecting a unique assemblage of species.
Exactly. Though the Arapaho snowfly is mentioned as having a very restricted range, potentially near endemic. So the park is crucial for safeguarding these unique combinations of life.
That makes sense. It's a vital piece of a larger ecosystem, not necessarily an isolated island. And we can't forget those key relationships, like the Clark's nutcracker and the pine seeds.
Right. Those intricate connections underscore how everything's linked. If one species declines, it can have ripple effects.
And the historical absence of top predators like grizzlies and wolves has clearly impacted things, especially the elk population and vegetation.
Yes, that's the driving force behind the elk and vegetation management plan. Using tools like fencing and, controversially, culling to try and restore some balance.
A complex issue for sure. How does the park handle the public perception of culling?
It involves a lot of public outreach and relying on scientific monitoring to justify the actions within that adaptive management framework. They often use trained volunteers in the culling process as well.
Okay. And finally, the report lists threatened and endangered species like the Canada lynx and greenback cutthroat trout, really emphasizing the ongoing conservation work.
It does. Species like the Mexican spotted owl, North American wolverine, that Arapaho snowfly, Colorado butterfly plant, Ute lady's tresses, they're all part of that conservation picture, each with unique challenges.
It's abundantly clear RMNP is way more than just pretty views. It's this intricate, interconnected web of life shaped by geography and biology.
Absolutely. And that geography has an incredibly long and captivating story stretching back almost 2 billion years. Let's dig into the geological and glacial marvels next.
2 billion years. It's hard to wrap your head around that. What was happening back then? What's the ancient story? I mean, 1.8 billion years. That's like half the age of the planet.
It is. The story starts in the Precambrian era, about 1.8 billion years ago. Metamorphic rocks like schist and gneiss formed from ancient sea sediments.
Okay, deep origins.
Then, around 1.4 billion years ago, molten rock magma pushed up from deep inside the earth and slowly cooled to form the granite that makes up the core of these mountains.
So the foundation is incredibly ancient. What happened over the next, well, billion-plus years?
The Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras saw cycles of seas covering the area and then uplift. During the Mesozoic, maybe 100 million years ago, dinosaurs were around, and sediments laid down then became the sedimentary rocks you see in the foothills today.
Right, like the layers outside the park.
Exactly. And then came the big event, the Laramide orogeny.
The mountain building.
Yes, starting about 70 million years ago. Intense tectonic forces pushed up those ancient Precambrian rocks and the overlying sedimentary layers.
Okay.
Then erosion got to work, stripping away the softer sedimentary rocks and exposing the tough granite core that forms the high peaks we see now.
And features like Trail Ridge and Flat Top Mountain, they're remnants of an older, flatter surface.
That's the idea. Remnants of an ancient erosion surface, a peneplain that existed before the most recent major uplift and all the glacial carving.
So those high, relatively flat areas are like windows into a much older, less rugged landscape.
That's fascinating. And the story didn't stop there. Nope. The Cenozoic era brought more uplift, significant faulting that raised the Front Range thousands more feet, and even some volcanic activity, mostly on the west side.
Okay, so we have this uplifted, complex landscape. Then comes the ice, the glaciers of the Pleistocene, the Ice Age. How did they sculpt what we see today?
The Ice Age, with its repeated glacial advances and retreats over thousands of years, was the master sculptor. These huge rivers of ice carved and widened the existing V-shaped river valleys.
Turning them into U-shapes.
Exactly, like in Glacier Gorge, classic U-shaped valley. As they moved, they scraped and plucked the bedrock, leaving telltale signs like striations, scratches, grooves, and polished rock surfaces.
With giant sandpaper.
Pretty much. And when they melted back, they left behind other features, most notably moraines.
Moraines? Those ridges of rock and debris?
Precisely. Piles of stuff the glaciers carried. Lateral moraines formed along the sides. Terminal moraines marked the glacier's farthest reach. Moraine Park itself sits in a basin framed by these glacial deposits.
Ah, so that's why it's called Moraine Park.
Yep. You see similar features in Glacier Basin, Horseshoe Park, the Comanche Valley.
And those dramatic bowl-shaped basins high up, often holding a lake, those are cirques, right? Like Chasm Lake below Long's Peak.
Yes, perfect example. Cirques are carved out at the head of glacial valleys by plucking and abrasion. Chasm Lake is a classic, stunning cirque. So is the one on Sundance Mountain.
And there were multiple ice ages.
Evidence suggests at least 4 major glaciations. The Pinedale and Bull Lake ones are the most recent and easiest to see the effects of today.
So it was really that combination of uplift from below and carving by ice from above that created this landscape.
A powerful partnership, absolutely. And those peneplain remnants like Trail Ridge and Flat Top Mountain give us that tangible sense of what it might have looked like before all that intense glacial carving. Amazing to think about.
It truly is. And within this grand picture, there are specific iconic formations. Long's Peak, obviously.
The big one. That massive granite monolith, the highest point, it's got a compelling story. Well, it's mostly that ancient Precambrian granite, but its distinct faces and sharp ridges were significantly shaped by glaciers, especially that deep cirque holding Chasm Lake on its east face.
And then there's Trail Ridge, not a peak, but that high, broad ridge the road crosses.
Exactly. A prime example of that uplifted ancient peneplain, giving incredible access to the alpine tundra.
And Flat Top Mountain, another one of those remnants. Broad, relatively level summit.
Right. Contrasting sharply with the deep glacial valleys around it, its summit is a hub for hiking trails heading down into those carved landscapes.
And Moraine Park, its shape is direct evidence of glaciers converging, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Glaciers flowing out of Forest Canyon, Spruce Canyon, Odessa Lake area all met there, leaving behind those defining moraines. It's like an open-air classroom for glacial geology.
Incredible forces over immense time. Now, even today, there are still glaciers and permanent snowfields up high, aren't there? Smaller ones.
Yes, much smaller than the Ice Age giants, but still there. About 30 perennial ice patches and small glaciers, or glacierettes, mostly tucked into those sheltered north or east-facing high cirques.
Are they named?
Some are. Andrews, Mills, Tyndall, Sprague, Rowe, Taylor, Muma. Andrews Glacier is maybe the only one showing consistent signs of active movement recently.
And these aren't leftovers from the main ice age, but formed more recently.
Correct. Probably during the Little Ice Age, a cooler period a few centuries ago, or even more recent neoglacial advances, and because of that, they're exceptionally sensitive to climate shifts.
So they're shrinking. The report mentions retreat since the 1990s.
That's the general trend, yes. They're valuable indicators of warming. The specifics vary a bit, though.
Like what?
Well, Andrews Glacier has been studied since the 1930s. It has crevasses cracks indicating movement, and radar suggests it might be the thickest glacier left in Colorado. It seemed relatively stable, maybe even slightly growing, in the early 2000s, but the long-term trend is retreat.
What about others?
Tyndall Glacier is interesting. Its end is covered in rock debris, forming a rock glacier. Studies actually showed slate thickening over about 50 years, maybe due to wind-blown snow.
Local factors.
Right, but it also has crevasses, suggesting some movement. Recent observations point to stability or slight increase, but with variations. Rowe Glacier shows crevassing too. Sprague Glacier, Enos Mills himself noted it moving back in 1906. And Mills Glacier has accessible moraines.
So they're being watched closely by USGS and the Park Service.
Exactly, using historical photos, mapping the terminus, remote sensing, ground-penetrating radar, a whole suite of tools. The USGS monitors glaciers nationwide, but the RMNP data is crucial for understanding regional climate impacts.
And ecologically, they're important too, providing meltwater.
Absolutely vital. They're a key source of cold water for alpine streams and lakes, especially late in the summer when other sources dwindle.
So their retreat affects stream flow and water temperature.
Definitely, which can threaten the cold water species adapted to those conditions. They're like water towers for the high country.
And canaries in the coal mine for climate change.
Precisely.
It's sobering. Such immense geological history, yet these features are so vulnerable now. Okay, let's shift gears to another fascinating layer. The echoes of the past, the human history within RMNP.
Right, and that story goes back millennia. Long before it was a park. We're talking ancient hunters, Native American tribes who knew these mountains intimately, then explorers, settlers, and finally the push for preservation.
Let's start way back. Who are the very first people here?
The Paleo-Indians, nomadic hunters who likely arrived as the Ice Age glaciers retreated maybe 10,000 to 15,000 years ago.
Hunting mammoths and ancient bison.
Exactly. And incredibly, evidence like Clovis and Folsom spear points has been found way up high, even on Trail Ridge.
Wow, following game that high up that long ago. Then came the archaic people.
Yes, starting around 8,000 years ago, they had a broader lifestyle, using more resources, occupying the area seasonally. What's really fascinating is their game drive systems.
Game drives, like fences.
Low rock walls, strategically placed cairns, designed to funnel animals like sheep, elk, deer towards hunters. Archaeologists have found over 40 of these sites along the Front Range crest.
Incredible ingenuity. Shows deep knowledge of the land and animals.
Absolutely. And later in this period, we see the bow and arrow appear around 400, 650 AD, and early pottery.
Okay, fast forward to more recent times, the Ute and Arapaho tribes.
The Ute entered this region around 1200, 1300 AD, primarily nomadic hunter-gatherers. The horse transformed them into bison hunters on the plains later, but they continued using mountain resources seasonally.
Right.
The Ute Trail, part of the old Spanish Trail network, passed nearby. They used Estes Park and Grand Lake seasonally. There's even a Ute legend about an attack near Grand Lake.
And the Arapaho.
They arrived later, early 1800s, migrating south, adopted more of a plains culture horses, bison, but they also roamed widely, including what's now RMNP.
Did they get along?
There was conflict sometimes, over resources. Both tribes used ancient trails across the Divide, Trail Ridge, Flat Top, Fall River Pass routes. We find evidence of their seasonal camps.
But then came displacement. Gold rush.
Yes, the 1858 gold discovery changed everything. Treaties chipped away at their lands. By the late 1870s, early 1880s, both tribes were largely removed to reservations. A tragic chapter.
Is their legacy still visible?
It is. In 1914, during the Park Campaign, an expedition with Arapaho elders like Gun Griswold and Sherman Sage resulted in about 30 Arapaho place names being officially added to the park map.
A recognition, at least.
The poignant one, reflecting shifting dynamics and acknowledging their deep connection.
Important history to remember. Okay, so after that disruption, European explorers and settlers arrive. Who are the key players then?
Well, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 opened the door. Early on, you had explorers, fur trappers, the famous mountain men,
Like Jedediah Smith.
possibly in the broader region. The 1820 Stephen Long expedition made the first documented non-Indian sighting of Long's Peak. Rufus Sage likely first entered the Eastern Park area in 1843.
And permanent settlement.
Joel Estes and his family arrived in 1858, settling the valley named after them. Then came adventurers. The Powell Byers Party made the first recorded ascent of Long's Peak in 1868.
And Addie Alexander, the first woman to summit in 1871.
Right. The late 19th century saw tourism begin and some resource development. Abner Sprague started dude ranching in Moraine Park in 1874. The Hayden Survey mapped the area that same year.
Was there mining?
Some small-scale attempts. Lulu City and Gaskill on the west side were active briefly in the 1870s, 80s. Eugenia and Meeker mines on the east side later. Lulu City is a ghost town now, a reminder of that era.
And infrastructure started appearing.
Yeah, the Pole Hill Stage Road around 1870. The Stanley Hotel opened in 1909. Squeaky Bob Wheeler's Hotel to Hardscrabble in 1907. And the Grand Ditch, a major water diversion project, started in 1895.
Which brings us to the park's creation, driven largely by Enos Mills, the father of RMNP. He sounds dedicated.
Incredibly so. A naturalist, author, lodge owner, deeply loved the mountains, but grew concerned about degradation from settlement and development.
Inspired by John Muir?
Yes. Around 1907, Mills, James Grafton Rogers, and others began campaigning hard for a national park. Years of writing, lecturing, lobbying.
And it worked.
Eventually,
Yeah.
the 1906 Antiquities Act helped pave the way. Then, January 26, 1915, President Wilson signed the RMNP Act. Formal dedication was September 4th, 1915.
Mills's vision realized.
And cemented the following year with the National Park Service Organic Act, creating the agency to manage parks with that dual mission, conservation and enjoyment for future generations.
Wow. What a journey from ancient hunters to conservation heroes. The human story is as compelling as the landscape. Okay, let's shift to how people experience this majesty today. Activities, experiences.
Absolutely. RMNP offers so much today. Scenic drives reaching incredible heights, challenging hikes to remote lakes, wildlife viewing, ranger programs.
Let's start with those drives. Trail Ridge Road, legendary, right? The highway to the sky.
It absolutely is. Highest continuous paved road in North America, cresting over 12,183 feet.
Incredible engineering.
Yeah, 48 miles from Estes Park to Grand Lake. It's like an ecological tour, climbing 4,000 feet with 11 miles above tree line in the alpine tundra.
And the views. Forest Canyon overlook, rock cut, lava cliffs, Milner Pass on the divide. You can even spot tundra wildlife from the car sometimes. Pikas, marmots.
You can. Bighorn sheep, too. But it's seasonal, right?
Yes, typically late May, early June to mid-October, depending on snow. Always check the status. And give yourself plenty of time, way more than 2 hours if you want to stop and enjoy it.
Good advice. Now, for a different feel, more historic, there's Old Fall River Road.
Right, the original auto route to the high country opened in 1920.
Exactly.
Yeah.
11 miles, mostly gravel, one-way uphill only. From Horseshoe Park up to Fall River Pass near the Alpine Visitor Center. Speed limit is just 15 miles per hour.
Forces you to slow down.
It does. It follows some old Native American paths, partly built by convict labor with hand tools, no guardrails in places, narrow.
Adds to the adventure. But not for RVs or trailers.
Definitely not. It's more rustic. Passes the Lawn Lake Flood, Alluvial Fan, Chasm Falls. A different vibe than Trail Ridge.
Ah.
Also seasonal, opening usually in early July.
Okay, drives covered. Now hiking. 355 miles of trails. But altitude is a serious factor.
Absolutely critical. Acclimatize slowly, drink tons of water, avoid alcohol initially. Altitude sickness is real. And the sun is intense. High sunscreen, hats, sunglasses are essential.
Got it. And the popular areas like Bear Lake Road need timed entry permits now during peak season.
Yes, due to high visitation. It helps manage crowding.
Which trails there are considered must-dos?
Well, the Bear Lake Loop is super easy. Iconic views, half-mile loop.
Accessible.
Then there's the classic moderate hike up past Nymph Dream, and Emerald Lakes. Just stunning.
Heard good things about that one.
Lake Haiaha is another moderate one, famous for that milky turquoise color after a rock slide. Alberta Falls is an easier hike to a popular waterfall.
Nice options. What about a bit longer?
Mills Lake in Glacier Gorge is a moderate, incredibly scenic hike. And for a real challenge, Sky Pond is strenuous, iconic alpine cirque. Involves some scrambling near the end.
And the ultimate challenge, Long's Peak via the Keyhole route. Very strenuous, technical climbing.
It is. Not a hike, it's a climb. Class 3 scrambling, serious exposure requires experience, gear, planning. Not for beginners or anyone afraid of heights.
Good warning. The report also mentions other trails like Calypso Cascades, Anuzel Falls and Wild Basin, and Lulu City Ghost Town Hike. Lots of variety.
Truly something for everyone.
Okay, wildlife viewing. Big draw for many. Best tips.
Dawn and dusk are usually best. Keep a safe distance, 75 feet for elk, deer, sheep, 120 feet for bears, moose. Never feed them.
Use binoculars.
Yes. Binoculars, telephoto lens. Be patient, be quiet.
Where to look for elk?
Moraine Park, Horseshoe Park, Upper Beaver Meadows on the east side, Kawunish Valley on the west. Higher up in summer, fall rut means bugling.
Bighorn sheep.
Sheep Lakes, May to mid-August, often 9 a.m., 3 p.m. Also on Trail Ridge Road, up on the tundra.
Moose.
Kawunish Valley, check the willow thickets along the river.
Kikas and marmots.
Rocky areas, Trail Ridge Road overlooks like Rainbow Curve, Rock Cut. Listen for the pika, eep.
Got it! And mule deer, birds, raptors. Just keep your eyes open.
Pretty much. American dippers and streams are always fun, too.
Now, for learning more, ranger programs and visitor centers sound great.
They are fantastic resources. Free programs, guided walks, talks, campfire programs, even snowshoe walks in winter. Check schedules online or at visitor centers.
Which visitor centers are key?
Beaver Meadows on the east is year-round, has the film, exhibits, permits, historic building. Alpine Visitor Center up on Trail Ridge is seasonal, focuses on tundra. Kawunishi Visitor Center is year-round, west side info, film, backcountry permits. Fall River is seasonal, east side, big bookstore. Moraine Park Discovery Center is seasonal, natural cultural history in a historic lodge.
And a wilderness office for backcountry info.
Yep, near Beaver Meadows. Essential stop for overnight trips.
So tons of ways to experience and learn about the park.
Absolutely. And for those seeking more solitude, there are lesser-known gems, often on the west side or down in Wild Basin.
Ooh, tell me about some off-the-beaten-path spots. West side first.
Okay, the hike to Lake Verna and Spirit Lake via East Inlet Trail. Longer day hike or backpacking. Great solitude, stunning lakes, backcountry camping. Spirit Lake sunsets are apparently amazing.
Sounds nice. Anything easier?
Summerlin Park via North Inlet. Quieter picnic spot, aspens, pines, good wildlife chances, easy loop trail. Coyote Valley Trail in Kawunishi is short, flat, accessible, follows the Colorado River, great views, good at sunset.
More strenuous options.
Baker Gulch and Parika Lake in the Never Summer Wilderness tough hike, elk moose potential, distant Long's Peak views. Timberlake Trail, off Trail Ridge West, steady climb to an alpine basin. Backcountry camping, good for meteor showers maybe.
Connecting with history.
Lulu City hike from Colorado River TH. Moderate trek to the 1870s, 80s, mining ghost town remnants, interpretive signs, follows the river.
Waterfall.
Cascade Falls from North Inlet TH. Easy moderate round trip to a multi-tiered waterfall. Good wildlife chances.
And Wild Basin in the southeast corner, known for waterfalls and fewer crowds.
Exactly. Calypso Cascades and Anuzel Falls hike is moderate, beautiful waterfalls, wildflowers, generally less busy than Bear Lake area.
Beyond hiking, other unique experiences.
Night sky viewing. High elevation, low light pollution make it great for stargazing. Sometimes they have astronomy programs.
Cool. What else?
Holsworth Historic Site in Kawunishi Valley. Preserved 1920s Dude Ranch gives a glimpse into early homesteading and tourism, a cultural gem. Winter is magical and quiet. Snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, many trails open, ranger walks available, sledding at Hidden Valley, even winter camping for the hardy.
And volunteer opportunities, like helping with elk management.
Occasionally available, things like that offer a really deep connection to park stewardship and conservation.
Sounds like there's a whole other layer of RMNP for those willing to explore beyond the main hubs. Now, managing this place, huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Let's talk park management, conservation, the future.
Right. It's guided by the park's foundation document. That outlines its purpose, significance, key resources, legal framework, essentially the blueprint.
And the purpose is that dual mandate, preserve ecosystems and wilderness, but also provide for recreation and enjoyment.
Exactly. Preservation and enjoyment, it's often a delicate balancing act.
And a big part of that balance is the elk and vegetation management plan, addressing the impact of elk on willows and aspens, especially in winter.
Precisely. It's a long-term plan, 2008-2028, using adaptive management. That means monitoring and adjusting strategies as needed.
What tools do they use?
Temporary fencing to protect plants, vegetation restoration, trying to redistribute elk with herding or aversion tactics, and sometimes lethal reduction culling by MPS staff or trained volunteers.
Focusing on females to manage population growth.
Generally, yes. The goal is to reduce elk numbers in key winter areas to allow vegetation to recover. The target was 600-800 elk in those zones. A 2015 update suggested they were meeting that objective in some areas. It shows the complexity of managing wildlife and habitat together.
And beyond elk, there are broader environmental challenges, climate change being a major one.
Huge. It's affecting the park in many ways and expected to intensify. Rising temps, less snow, more rain, earlier snowmelt and runoff, lower summer stream flows, longer droughts.
Stressing the trees, making them vulnerable to insects, fire.
Yes. And shrinking glaciers impact late-season water. Longer growing seasons might favor non-native plants. High-elevation ecosystems like the tundra are especially vulnerable, limited places to migrate uphill.
So what can the park do? Adaptation strategies.
They're looking at preserving climate refugia, resilient areas, protecting migration paths, managing for resilience, public education. Complex issues arise, like assisted migration within wilderness areas. Climate change is really a threat multiplier.
And air quality is another concern. Pollutants from outside the park.
Yes. The RMNP Air Quality Initiative, a collaboration with CDPHE, the State Health Dept, NPS, and EPA, tackles this. Key issues are nitrogen deposition, ozone, haze.
Nitrogen harms the tundra.
Excess nitrogen from fossil fuels. Agriculture gets deposited and harms high-elevation soil and plants. There's a nitrogen deposition reduction plan aiming to cut emissions through voluntary and regulatory means. Needs ongoing monitoring. Shows how interconnected the park is.
And the massive 2020 wildfires, East Troublesome and Cameron Peak, left huge impacts needing recovery efforts.
Absolutely devastating fires. Burned huge areas, damaged infrastructure, trails, cultural sites, habitat. Immediate response focused on stabilization BAER teams. Now it's longer-term restoration BAR efforts.
What does that involve?
Treating invasive plants, repairing fences, stabilizing trails, removing hazard trees, archaeological monitoring, studying impacts on fish like trout. A massive undertaking.
And keeping the park running requires infrastructure work, funded partly by the Great American Outdoors Act.
Correct. This year, FY24 sees big projects, rehabbing Kawanish VC, bridge culvert work, road paving, replacing toilets, stabilizing slopes near Bear Lake, trail repairs, Tonhutu, Colorado River, Timber Creek campground upgrades.
But there's still a big maintenance backlog?
Huge. $233 million, mostly roads and trails. There's also a proposal for post-fire housing for staff.
And managing visitors led to the timed entry system during peak season, the day-use visitor access strategy. Seems necessary, but maybe frustrating for some. How do you think that reflects the broader challenge of balancing access and preservation in popular natural areas?
It's a critical tool now. The goals are reducing congestion, improving safety, protecting resources from overuse, and hopefully enhancing the visitor experience by spreading people out. You need a reservation via recreation.gov for park access, or specifically Bear Lake Road during peak times.
Released monthly, some next-day availability.
Yes, with a nominal fee. Exemptions for campers, bikes, commercial tours. It's adaptive, subject to review and adjustment based on how it's working.
So, looking ahead, what's the long-term vision for RMNP?
The core vision remains the NPS mission. Preserve it unimpaired for future generations, as laid out in the foundation document. Using that adaptive management framework, monitor, adjust, learn.
Continuing conservation efforts.
Definitely. Invasive plant management, threatened species recovery, greenback trout, Arapaho snowfly, forest health initiatives, specific projects like the Kawanishi Valley Restoration Collaborative, replacing the Sprague Lake Boardwalk.
It depends on ongoing research, monitoring, and adaptable management.
Exactly. It's a constant effort to keep this extraordinary place wild and accessible.
It really is. And that brings us back to why RMNP is so special. It's more than just stunning views. It's this dynamic tapestry of geology, ecosystems, human history, all woven together.
Beautifully put. From those ancient ice-sculpted peaks to the delicate alpine wildflowers and the diverse wildlife, it's a place that inspires awe and deep appreciation for nature.
And even with 21st century challenges, visitation pressure, climate change, wildfires, The dedication to stewardship and adaptive management offers real hope for its future.
It does. It all circles back to that fundamental purpose.
Yeah.
Preserving this irreplaceable landscape while providing opportunities for all of us to experience its wonders.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe a more personal one for you, our listener.
Considering everything we've explored, the deep time, the intricate life, the human stories, what is your own relationship with wild places like Rocky Mountain National Park? What role might each of us play, in our own way, in their preservation, inspired by the enduring spirit of this truly remarkable landscape?